Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.
This is Scott Richmond
and Arnie Sherman.
You're listening to What Do You Know on Newstalk KGVO, AM 1290 and 98.3 FM. Arnie Sherman, a good Sunday morning.
Good morning to you, Scott. We've been on hiatus for about 7-8 weeks now, playing Mayor Engen, the late mayor's tapes. You know, the best of the hits of the mayor. He was a frequent guest on our show, and it was good to catch up with his legacy and his history. And now we are going to follow up apropos to that with having our new mayor on the show, Jordan Hess.
I'm looking forward to it. Arnie, I think the one thing that was interesting playing the old tapes with Mayor Engen, especially when he started kind of recording with us in 2015, he was shot out of a cannon. He had a ton of energy. He had a ton of ideas. It was his first time being on the air on KGVO in probably 5 years at that point, because he had not been on the air with us for that long. So this was his kind of coming back to, you know, talk radio here in town.
Right, and we got a lot out of him, and we got a lot of information about his vision for the city. But the city of Missoula, the ship Missoula, has a new captain, and we're anxious to learn more about him and to find out what his vision is moving forward. And as you know, Jordan has been on city council for the last 9 years, but often council member being part of a group that's trying to reach consensus, you know, operates in a little bit of an, you know, anonymity. And now we have a chance to have him here to talk singularly about what kind of leadership direction he's going to bring to Missoula.
I agree. And as I said, I heard Jordan speak with Dennis Bragg at a city kind of meeting, if you will, at the library 2 weeks ago. And there was an array of topics being covered, and Jordan was very open and honest and forthright with, you know, with the group there. And I think people like that that transparency and that honesty. So.
Well, we'll see what we can find out while we have him on the show this week.
Okay, back with Jordan Hess after these words. Arnie Sherman, we are back with Jordan Hess, Mayor Jordan Hess.
Mr. Mayor, how are you today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me today.
We look forward to this for the last few weeks. You've been mayor now for a month.
Yeah, a month, 4 weeks today.
Well, congratulations. I know that the council went through a laborious process. Somebody said you never want to watch politics being made or sausage, right? And there was a lot of public comment about how many rounds it took, but you overcame all that and been elected mayor. You're going to serve now for another year, and then you are going to decide at some point whether you're going to seek election.
Yeah, absolutely.
At that point, and that's the way it's going to all play out?
Yep. Yeah. And, you know, politics is decision-making in public, and decision-making isn't always easy, and it isn't always seamless. So having a dialogue in public about our community, that's what politics is. So the process was a little clunky, I'd say, but it was, it's a fine process. We have continuity of government is something that government takes really seriously. So we have a process spelled out and glad to be here now and glad to be moving forward.
Right. And I'll just have to add to that. I've been involved off and on in political venues for most of my life. There's certain things when you get to a stalemate like that, you just can't have an open discussion. You're trying to work on personalities and feelings and all that. This isn't theater, theater of the realm where, you're going to stab somebody in public you have to have some collegiality and some discretion for, covering the fine points of coming to a consensus and an agreement. And that's not hiding anything. It's just human nature and in reality of the situation. So from a personal perspective, it seemed to me maybe a couple of rounds earlier, there should have been a private discussion about how we're going to unjam all this and what are the issues. And not all of that has to be displayed, completely in public. So for our listeners who don't know you, who is Jordan Hess?
Yeah. Well, I came to Missoula in 2005, and my Missoula story is really kind of a common Missoula story. I came to attend the University of Montana, and I loved it here, and I never left. Before that, I was born in Dickinson, North Dakota. My parents had a couple of restaurants. They were small business owners, and grew up in that environment. And when I was about 9 years old, they decided they'd had enough of that line of work, tired of working around the clock, and we moved to Helena. And so I mostly grew up in Helena, and came to Missoula in 2005. Studied geography at the university, and got involved in local government through some classes at the university, and just always had an interest in local government from then on. So. You
had an interest, but did you ever see yourself in local government?
I didn't. I really didn't. I participated in the first downtown master plan process in 2000 in the late 2000s, and I really enjoyed this idea that you could decide what kind of community you wanted to build.
Sure,
I love this idea that you could say, we've got this great downtown. How do we work together as public and private partners to make it better? And so plugged in that process, and then some years later, there was a vacancy on the City Council on Ward 2, and I applied for it. I didn't get it, and then a few years later, here it turns out I was running for City Council. So I ran in 2013 and was elected and took office in 2014.
And how has your experience over those 9 years been for you?
It was great. I came in with this, my professional background is transportation. I was transportation director at the university for a number of years. And
you brought electric buses to the university. I remember that. Yeah. Smart move now, right?
Yeah, really
smart.
So, I had this transportation background, and one of the things about serving on a local government body like the City Council is you just learn so much all the time, and it is so it's so much fun, frankly. I never in a million years thought that I would be as interested in something like wastewater as I am, but the way the city of Missoula handles wastewater is from the collection system to the treatment to everything through that process is fascinating, and everywhere you look, there's the city's a service provider. So whether it's parks or utilities or public safety, we have all these services that we provide. And being on the council was just a way to. I mean, it's really a masterclass in how the community works.
Right.
An opportunity to really make it better.
Are you a gamer at all? Do you play games?
I play board games. I'm not a video gamer.
Did you ever play a game called SimCity?
Yeah, I did.
Isn't that I always think of SimCity as kind of like that. You're doing that for real life, though.
Yeah.
Right.
And there's a few more. The zoning's a little more complicated. And
but it's interesting how it all works together. And
Yeah.
It sounds like that's something you're really adept in and kind of fascinated with.
I love the process. I just find it to be fascinating.
Well, what I've found interesting about what you've already said was the idea that you could implement something and see the results of it in a city this size. When I travel around the world, I've been to 100 countries. Every time I'm in a city like Shanghai with 35 million people, I always think about how do they manage the garbage here?
Right.
What happens if there's a power failure when you have 60,000? It's bad enough, but it seems manageable. There seems to be ways to handle it. But when you have 35 million
Arnie.
people, or New York City, when you walk through New York City and there's garbage piled up to, on a Saturday morning, there's garbage in the street, and then Monday morning it's all gone.
Right.
Where does it go? How do they manage it? So, you're now on a smaller level, but it is our community. You're now have your fingers in all of those areas.
Yeah, and every day is so interesting because there's so much. The volume of work that the city does continues to surprise me, and I think it would really surprise most of the residents of our community just how many services the city provides.
Well, there's a city manager, and how many employees now are employed by the city of Missoula?
So seasonally we get up over 900, and we have a chief administrative officer and a handful of department heads, and the total organization in peak employment's around 900.
Right, and how do you find now running an organization that large? I know you have a city manager, but you're the selected and maybe elected representative for all of this. How does that all fit together? How are you feeling after a month?
It's been great. So first of all, the city staff have been so incredibly supportive and helpful. I stepped in, and one thing that John did really well was he cultivated a really good group of city staff. So our senior leadership, our department managers and deputy department heads, and really the entire organization is full of people who care very deeply about the work and care very deeply about the city of Missoula. So that's been really rewarding. I can't imagine stepping in without some of those relationships and without some of that experience.
Sure. You talk about board games. You now have a fire department and a police department, don't you? That's kind of cool. When you see these mayors in the old Western movies, right? And they got the sheriff and the two deputies, right? And you have your own. You're now overseeing.
But I actually think that's good training, right? Like, especially if that's gaming and things like that. Like, that's your generation, certainly, right? And this is like, it prepares you for the processes, how things work.
Not to belabor the analogy, but you play a board game and there are rules, and you follow the rules,
right?
And that's, city government has rules. There's a structure and there's a process, and I think thinking about things sort of systemically through that standpoint of there being a structure and a process and a way to do things is a helpful way to think about things.
Sure.
How did your family, and you have a partner as well, how did they all feel about you becoming mayor? What was their thinking?
They were really supportive, and I never in a million years thought I would be mayor. I was happy on the council. I really spent several months trying to talk myself out of it. But there just came a point when I had worked so closely with John, and when he passed away, I thought I have to put my hat in the ring and see if I can try to carry on this legacy. But my family's been really supportive. My partner Catherine has been really supportive, and we've just they've really encouraged me and really given me latitude to be late for dinner or for to neglect other things for a little while I get my feet wet.
And what about the legacy do you want to carry on? And then we want to talk more, I think, about what you want, your print that you want to put on the city.
Well, so the city of Missoula has a strategic plan, and it's about a 3-year strategic plan, and Mayor Engen and the council adopted that plan, and it's really rooted in our growth policy. So our growth policy is our North Star of what we want our community to look like, and we created this strategic plan that would really guide the day-to-day actions of the city, and I'm steeped in that vision. I helped create that vision along with Mayor Engen, and I'm totally bought into it. The voters elected John Engen, and it's really my intent to follow through on a lot of the priorities that he set in motion. But those are priorities that were collaborative with the city council, that were collaborative with the staff, and that were collaborative with the community through public involvement and through constituent comment to city council members.
So you're committed to that. And you're going to have to run in a year if you choose to run to continue to be mayor. What are the things beyond the plan that you have as a personal desire to see fulfilled by the city?
We just launched a comprehensive code reform effort. So this is an effort to overhaul our zoning code. Our zoning code was originally adopted back in the 1930s, and it's been amended over the years, and there have been large overhauls, but it's still kind of the basic pyramidal zoning of that was deployed across the country in the 30s.
Sure.
And it's got a lot of baggage associated with it on account of that.
So what for our lay listeners, what do you mean by zoning? Like the commercial zone, the industrial zone, the residential zone, and then subzones of that?
So the old SimCity example was exactly commercial, residential, industrial, and our zoning code's a lot more complicated. We've got several dozen different types of zoning, and each of those carries its own set of regulations. So it might say how far your building has to be set back from the street or from the alley, or it might say how tall the building can be. It might talk about your where you can put a fence or where you have to put landscape screening. So it's really kind of the nuts and bolts of how we build our community, what the built form of our community looks like. And like I said, it's a really clunky old document that was adopted in its original form decades ago and has been kind of overhauled piecemeal over the years.
And the big thing that's changed over those 80 years, right, or 90 years.
90 years.
Sustainability, climate, being mindful of climate. Whatever changes.
Well, in the growth of the city, 1930s, this was not the same.
Yeah.
Well,
place.
and transportation growth.
Yeah.
So talk about that. So what is the nuts and bolts of that?
So one of the best parts about this is that we're really going back to the roots in some ways too. So you look at some of our most historic neighborhoods, like the University District neighborhood. If that neighborhood were to burn down, we couldn't rebuild it. Our zoning code would not allow us to rebuild that beautiful, vibrant neighborhood. And so a lot of it is looking back to sort of the original intent of how our community developed, and pulling in some of those ideas and kind of building a framework around that. So our zoning code right now, I like to say it's like a junk drawer in your garage where you've got everybody's got a junk drawer in their garage, and you open it up and there's a bunch of tools in there, and they're, half of them are rusty, and maybe there's a pile of screws, and chances are you might be able to find what you want, but chances are you might get cut when you're rummaging around, and it's inefficient, and it's not a very productive way to get anything done. What we're doing is we're taking the junk drawer and we're reorganizing it. We're putting up some pegboard, and we're making sure that it's efficient, that we have the tools that we need, and that those tools are accessible to us.
Sure.
So it's a lot of it's about streamlining, but a lot of it's also about innovating.
Well, and it's important to innovate because what was available in 1930, 90 years ago,
Sure.
is completely changed. I was just reading yesterday about a company that's developing flying elevators.
Oh wow!
Where you can move them by air to different places. So
Makes
you have
sense.
not just to install them, to
Right.
use them for events, temporary elevators that you could fly. That's not in your zoning code what you do with flying elevators, right? And all of the other technology that change over time.
But it's interesting when you're hearing Mayor Hess talk about it because you're looking at the history and you're saying, what do we want to preserve of the history?
Sure.
Which I think people want that, right? They want the intent of the neighborhood to stay, the integrity of it to stay as is. But there are some instances, certainly when you start talking about commercial and industrial, where it's out of date.
Yeah, and so people largely want to live in a nice neighborhood. They want to have access to quality commercial, businesses that they like to support. They want to have access to parks. They want to have a livable experience, and that's what a lot of our original zoning districts, or what a lot of our original neighborhood development got us. I think people also want a diversity of housing types. So we need different types of housing for different people in our community. Our zoning code really restricts us to in ways that limit us, and so. The code reform is really about creating tools that will,
Sure.
And I think one of the things that's great about this is that I really do think that we can improve the experience for everyone. So we've got, right now we've got developers who are unhappy because it's difficult to apply our zoning code. We've got staff who have to implement the clunky zoning code. We have elected officials who have to make decisions to change or modify the zoning code to make a project work. And we've got neighbors who want predictability in what they see built near them.
Right.
And none of those user groups are particularly happy right now.
No, and you never hear about the people that are happy. Only the unhappy people reach out to
gosh.
you.
Yeah.
So in that way, it's always been a thankless job to be a public servant.
So I think this zoning code rewrite, though, we can actually make meaningful differences in making it easier to develop housing that Missoulians can afford, making it easier to get commercial projects off the ground, but still maintaining our community's high standards of quality.
Right.
So
but
here-
the interesting thing is that now I'm thinking about this, of all the different constituents, you're the center point for all of their feedback. Because the city workers are going to tell you what they think.
I would say target.
I was trying to be, but no, because I'm thinking like, and I know Mayor Engen actually bore a lot of that, right? Like that, they all came to him, and it was never easy.
Yeah.
That was probably one of the hardest aspects of the job, but you seem to be tackling it head on.
There's a lot to balance, but Overwhelmingly, people have been great. I mean, overwhelmingly, people have been kind and generous with me.
Good.
And it's a testament to our community. I mean, we live in a community where people care so deeply about the community. And I think we live in a community where we can disagree in a civil manner.
Although there is a thing called the honeymoon period, which you're still in, so that's a good thing. But let me ask you this. Here's the thing that I think everybody's grappling with. You're trying to create this organized tool that will allow other tools to be implemented so that we have a future that meets all of these challenges and needs. At the same time, we have a phenomena where, not too long ago, we had the Yellowstone phenomena and the COVID phenomena, and all of these folks were moving to Montana, a lot of them to Missoula. We've seen a lot of them go to Bozeman as well. Many of them were high-end people that created a little bit more of a disconnect between the normal standards of life. So we have that going on. Meanwhile, we have now an inflationary and recessional cycle that's happening to put a damper on or controls on a lot of that. And you're trying to implement something that's going to be flexible enough to handle all this sort of things. How does those variables that you don't have much control over, Missoula doesn't control inflation very much. How do you factor that in when you're trying to figure out what direction to move in the future? Yeah,
I think that's one of the things that's really challenging is we are not going to single-handedly solve our housing problems locally. It's a regional problem, it's a national problem, and it relates to inflation, and it relates to interest rates, and it relates to the cost of raw materials, and it relates to the fact that we live in this beautiful place that people want to move to.
Right.
And so there's a market factor that we are never going to be able to influence as heavily as we'd like. What the zoning rewrite can do is it can simplify the process and make the process easier. And so it can make getting housing that people can afford on the market easier. So there's also a bunch of things that we need to do that are outside of that regulatory framework. And I think that's more direct participation in our housing market. So we've got a strategy called land banking. And that's we take city-owned land that's surplus land, and we establish some guiding principles, and we offer it for development for projects that really specifically meet the city's objectives. So on North Scott Street is a great example of there's a project that'll be breaking ground in the next several months that'll offer around 70 permanently affordable homes, and that's a partnership involving city-owned land and a private developer. So we need partnerships like that. We need strategies like that land banking strategy. We need strategies like deploying federal grant money to housing specific projects. We have our Affordable Housing Trust Fund. That's another venue to provide some financing assistance to housing that meets the goals of the city. So it's kind of twofold, that regulatory frame side, but then also direct participation in our housing market.
One of the offshoots of affordable housing is the problem that the city is having, as many other cities, with homelessness. And we've tried a number of approaches, and there's still, it's still a significant problem. Is there anything new coming down the pike that's going to make the community feel a little bit more at ease with how we're grappling with the homeless?
Yeah, and that's another one of those problems that I would say.
Or the unhoused, excuse me.
It's one of those things that feels intractable. But when you zoom out and look at the national landscape, there's some real successes in Missoula. So you look at some of the West Coast cities where there's just vast tent cities. And we don't have that in Missoula. And I think it's because we've been working deliberately for the last decade on making sure that homelessness, when it occurs, is brief, that it's non-recurring, and those, by doing that, it's less impactful. And so the temporary safe outdoor space that the county opened up, that's basically a safe sanctioned campsite. And they've had tremendous success at that. About 46% of the people who have received services at the temporary safe outdoor space have gone on to find permanent housing, and they didn't do that through subsidized housing. They did that through repairing relationships with friends or family because of the fact that they were surrounded with services at that temporary safe outdoor space. So it's kind of a hand up. You give someone an opportunity, and then help them find housing opportunities on their own. So we do have a problem with the unhoused population in our community being larger than we want it to be. But I think we're on a good path, and we've done a lot of work that is really making a difference in that realm.
And I see that the Poverello Center is going to now develop an emergency temporary housing program as well, in addition.
So they're opening up their emergency winter shelter. That's something that they've done the last couple of years. The last couple of years, we have not had a single homeless individual in our community die from exposure in the winter. And that's something that just a few years
laudable.
ago. Yeah. And just a few years ago, that was an annual occurrence that we'd have multiple, members of our community that would die of exposure. And we just don't see that anymore. And it's because of that emergency winter shelter service.
Mayor, Arnie talks a little bit about the honeymoon period that you're currently in, but how has the community kind of accepted you, and are you open to meeting with members of the community? Do you have open office hours? What's that experience been like? Yeah, I'm getting used to being a more public figure. That's something that has been an adjustment, but it's been really rewarding. People have been really positive. They haven't hesitated to share their ideas. There's been a large outreach to the office, and I am very interested in taking meetings with community members. So if people have concerns, they're welcome to reach out to our office and get on the calendar. One of the things about an election is that the voters, over a period of months, and now it feels like years with the way our elections go now, but the voters get the opportunity to get to know a candidate as they're campaigning. Right. I was elected in Ward 3, I was elected 3 times rather in Ward 2, but citywide, the voters haven't had that opportunity, and so through public forums, through media appearances, through office hours, I'm trying to provide opportunities for voters to come and get to know me, so I welcome people to reach out, it's something that I think is important for our community. It's great. I have to say, because having just met you a couple of weeks ago and now spending time with you here, you seem like a very mild-mannered, easygoing guy. But politics could get really dirty really quick, and it could be a fight. So how, in your previous campaigns for Ward 3, did you encounter any mudslinging, and did you have to get your boxing gloves on, or I was fortunate. I ran a couple of campaigns that were unopposed on the ballot. Then that's the easiest.
I did go
shadow boxing.
My very first one, I was unopposed, and I ran as if I was opposed. I really wanted the voters to get to know me, so I went door to door all throughout Ward 2.
Yelled at himself. You know what you're talking about, Jordan? Yes, I do.
I was opposed in 2021, and I think that the local races, they're nonpartisan and they're pretty civil, and I think that's important. I think our politics in general, not just locally, our politics in general
have lost civility.
And I think we cling to that in Missoula, and I think we need to continue to cling to it.
Right. One of the things that was always disheartening to me, and continues to be a challenge for any elected official, and you're going to face it as well, is to be criticized for things that you don't control. I remember a number of people criticized the Mayor Engen, the late Mayor Engen, about the rise in property tax when it's set by the state.
Yeah,
and you just have to accept it. It's the Lord High Commissioner in Helena, sets property tax, and you can have minor ways to deal with it.
Yeah.
But then you get blamed for it all the time. Look how high our property tax is. It's crazy. So you're going to be confronted with some of those things. And what are some of the other sort of lightning rod areas do you think that we're going to be experiencing as over the next few years here?
Well, I think that that housing, I think that climate, I think that broadly speaking, equity, taxes. infrastructure. These are all issues that would be better addressed at a different level of government. Local government is often left picking up the pieces when state and federal policies fail us.
Sure.
And so that's the context for, we didn't used to be in the mental health business in local government. Now we are. We didn't used to be in the housing business in local government. Now we are, and that's a function of need. And so, but what we can do at the local level is we can get to work. We can try to solve. We can try to be part of the solution. And that's what I intend to do. Is just if we see a need locally, we'll do our best locally to solve it.
I think that's a very important point that you just made that people need to understand, and you can help articulate, is that local government is being asked to do a lot of things it was never intended to do. Mm-hmm. And part of that's due to political disruption. It's due to economic changes that no one has really any clear understanding about what to do about. I mean, people are mad at the Fed. The Fed thinks it's doing the right thing, it's trying to fight inflation, but then it's wiping out people's savings in a short-term period. I mean, all these things have unintended consequences. And most people don't understand, I think, that many of the issues that you have to grapple with have fallen to you because other systems have not worked successfully.
No, it's a great point. And I think property taxes are the best example of that, where our property tax system was designed for a different economy. And in the 1980s, we had 4 lumber mills in town. Our housing values were low. We didn't really have much for tourism. And so it made sense in that economy. And now we have the situation's turned on its head. We don't have the industry we had. Our home values are through the roof. So our property values from a tax standpoint are through the roof. And we have millions of tourists a year, and we're not able to capture anything out of them. And so that's a solution, or that's a problem that needs a statewide solution. But at the local level, we do what we can. To keep the lights on.
Yeah. Well, that love letter known as Yellowstone from Montana to the rest of the world has literally transformed our state into and our tourism.
Yeah.
First of all, are you going to have a cameo? Has anyone invited you to be on? No. I'll take that as a no.
I have not.
but when you speak about tourism and capturing the value, I mean, it's a real concern that we're not. Like, people are spending on average how many days here in Missoula? 2 days?
And they're coming through and they're spending, and we're glad to have them. I mean, they're coming through and they're spending money in our local businesses, and it's a wonderful place to come and visit.
Right.
I love to have family and friends come and visit. But every time I travel somewhere, I don't not go out to eat because I have to pay $1.69 and
agreed. Right. Yeah. I mean, you go to New York City, it's $40 a night.
Yeah.
For local tax. Nobody says, I'm not staying in a hotel in New York, so I have to pay this $40.
I'm not sure why everyone's so hung up on that. I think we should get that tax. I really do.
Well, we tried. I mean, we tried to get it, and the state turned it down.
It got voted down. But it's also interesting thing about tourism is that we don't want to just be a drive-through. We want people to stop here and spend time here. And so working with the community and the development community and the recreation community to create a magnet, for Missoula is part of the mission,
we're developing some of that. The new airport facility is fantastic, and that's going to double. But you mentioned Yellowstone. I was talking on the phone with someone from South Africa.
Oh, wow.
And they were saying, I want to come to Montana. And I said, why? And they said, Yellowstone. It is a global
reach.
It's a global reach, and people see this, and, particularly in places that don't have the abundance of outdoor recreation, and it becomes a fantasy for them. And
it's not. But the most amazing thing about that is that who would have ever thought it, right? Like 5 years ago.
Well, you had a little bit of that effect when River Run Through happened, but it wasn't quite not like this.
This is sustained. This is a sustained love letter from.
Well, as long as Kevin Costner keeps just making money off of running. Year after year series on this,
right? But also the focus on Missoula and using Missoula as a backdrop in Hamilton and all the way down the Bitterroot or up the Bitterroot.
Even though it's supposed to be Yellowstone, it is. They figure it out. I've had visitors already who say, "I want to go down and see the Dutton Ranch."
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Dutton Ranch. On another media note, last night for some reason in my feeds on Instagram or TikTok, I started to see a lot of contentious videos of contentious city council meetings from my old hometown back in New Jersey. It just started to feed a stream of these videos. And I know, having spent so much time on city council, and I've attended a few council meetings, and you are such a thoughtful, well thought out, thoughtful person. What happens when people come and are airing their grievances and using that forum to not always act with civility? I mean, they say sometimes really hurtful, nasty things.
In Parks and Rec, Leslie Knope has a line that I think is great, and I know it's a fictional show, but she says,
"It's life.
People yelling are caring very loudly," and
that's true.
I mean, that's the thing, is it when
they're emotionally unwell.
by and large,
You said that, Arnie, not Jordan.
By and large, they're coming down to because they have a concern and they care about their community or their neighborhood,
right?
And so, keeping that context in mind is really important. Sometimes the council meeting is not the most productive venue for a back and forth exchange either. So that's why I really encourage people to reach out if they have a concern. Reach out to me, reach out to their council member, have a discussion. The council meeting is necessarily formal and kind of one way. And so sometimes there's a better forum for an initial conversation as well.
That's a good, thoughtful answer from someone.
Let me flip a little bit here. I want to know more about Jordan Hess.
I do. That was my next set of questions, Arnie.
So, do you have hobbies? What do you do when you're not working? I know that's hardly. There's very little time for that. But what are your passions outside of work?
Yeah, I love to cook.
Nice.
It's something that
Will
I
you
really
cook for
enjoy.
us?
No, I didn't today.
Arnie and I love to eat.
Yeah, you can tell that.
I love to eat too, so that's maybe the inspiration for loving to cook. But I really enjoy that. I enjoy gardening. I love getting out in camping and hiking and doing the things Montana has to offer. Catherine and I just got a new dog, and so we are
a rescue dog.
A rescue dog.
Yeah,
that's from animal control. So
great.
we are getting to know him and vice versa, and that's
he'll be taking over very shortly.
Yeah.
They're good at that.
They sure are.
But no, that's been great. And
does family come out and visit you and spend time? Your family's back in the Dakotas.
I've got family in Helena, and then in Livingston, and most of my family's around Montana. I've got family in Havre.
So what's it like now coming here as the son of the mayor?
Well, we haven't really had time to test that theory yet, so we'll have to report back on that.
Can you get a good seat at a restaurant?
No. So you alluded to already Havre and Helena and other places. Have you, over the last 9 years, or now do you plan to commiserate with the mayors of these other towns and the leaders of the other towns and find out what you have in common and what you can learn from each other and that sort of thing?
So there's a annual conference. It's the Montana League of Cities and Towns Conference. That was last week up in Kalispell.
Oh, really? That's cool.
And I got the opportunity to meet mayors from around the state. Some of them I'd known in the past. Several of them I was meeting for the first time in this new capacity. It's amazing how universal some of the challenges are. The property tax concern is universal. The local option tourism tax, there might be some differing on what the best tool is or what the best mechanism is, but the concern is universal.
Right.
And so I think there's really power in getting together and sharing those stories and learning from one another. And frankly, Great Falls has a lot of the same problems as Billings, as Missoula, as Malta. I mean, it doesn't really matter community size or location. There's a lot of similar challenges.
What about Bozeman's challenges?
I didn't deliberately leave them out. They have a lot of the same challenges we do, and I think they have some greater affordability challenges than we have.
For sure.
But they've got
one of our next interviews.
Yes,
they've got a campus, a similar campus community relationship. A lot of similarities, and I think we can learn a lot from each other there as well.
Right, and their football team's ranked right behind ours, which is
that's good. We like that. But you bring up a good point. Have you established you probably had a good relationship with the administration over at the university?
Yeah, and it's been great to transition this relationship.
Sure.
But no, I had a great had lunch with President Bodner and kind of talked about shared priorities. And I think there's so much opportunity because the city fundamentally is a service provider. We like I said, whether it's wastewater or parks, we provide services to the public.
Right.
And the university is in that business as well. But I think there's opportunity to collaborate as service providers, different constituency, but opportunities to collaborate. I also think the university is such a brain trust, and there's opportunities for us to create internship pipelines or to create research opportunities, or we turn around and spend a couple tens of thousands of dollars on a study or something, and sometimes that's important, but sometimes we could engage an academic program and provide a learning opportunity and get a work product out of it as well.
Sure, you could have a graduate a group do it as for credit or whatever. One of the things that I think you really adds to your capability in the position is that you were inside the city that's inside the city of Missoula, which is the University of Montana.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's like a company town, right? If that was the steel mill, the policies of the city would be crafted around some of their interests. And you have a university, which is arguably a lot better. And you were inside that apparatus. So you understand how it works and you understand where the resources are, in collaboration. I mean, I'm sure that it's no... it's not a coincidence that the city has electric, powered buses, some of them, and you crafted that strategy for the university before the city took it on. And there are other ways. I've always felt there were ways in which the city and the university could share resources more effectively.
Yeah, and I think that it's. I think it's a great conversation to have. The university is a large public sector employer, just like the city, and so there's some similarities in structure and a lot of applicable lessons as I come from over there to
right. I mean, the city university has its own police force. Yeah. It has all of those other kinds of resources that you could share, not share necessarily, but learn from.
Sure. And we absolutely can. It actually also begs the question, in addition to the university, what other large companies like the Cognizants of the world or the Washington Court, have you started to firm up relationships there or kind of move those forward? I mean, you've only been in the job for a month. But still,
I've been the mayor serves on the board of the Missoula Economic Partnership,
right.
And so have been getting immersed in that world and meeting a lot of the other the major employers that are involved in that.
Sure.
And I've been kind of slowly reaching out as I have time to large private sector partners in the community.
What? Mayor, where do you see Missoula 10 years from now?
Well, I think the way we need to measure our success as a community is whether or not our residents have their needs met. And so, are their physical needs met? Are their mental health needs met? Are their social needs met? Are their spiritual needs met? Are we as a community meeting the needs of our residents? And I think that the answer to that is largely yes, and I think that it needs to become yes for the segment of our population that we're not currently serving. So I think the role of local government is we really can be a force, a good force, a transformative force in people's lives through the services that we provide for the residents we serve. So I think in 10 years we're a community that people want to live in. We're a community where people have their needs met. We're a community that is safe and resilient and innovative. And I think we're on a good path.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's where local government and local media and local, everything's local. So I think we've been distracted for so long, for at least for the last 5-6 years, from everything happening on the national stage. Right? And it's kind of been a distraction, but really everything does happen locally.
Sure. One of the permutations of that I'm always interested in, because I don't always see how it fits together smoothly, is the city-county relationship.
Yeah.
I mean, in Missoula, you can step one step and you're outside of the city
Yeah.
limits, but you don't know that, right? So how does that all work? You and the commissioners?
Yeah, the commissioners. I've had a great relationship with the commissioners, and I think Commissioner Slotnick always likes to say that this is the golden age of local government, and I think he's right. We have these collaboration. We have a collaborative relationship that's really productive, and it's at the staff level and it's at the elected official level. And we've got a lot of joint programs. We're in the process of acquiring the federal building downtown as a joint entity.
That's exciting.
And that's a great example of a collaborative project. And the result of that collaboration is that, first of all, 1900s, 1911, I think, through 1938, historic building is not going to get torn down. And the second is that we will get an administrative facility for both city and county that is cheaper than all of the other alternatives. So we'll move into this beautiful,
it's a cool building.
Yeah, this beautiful space, and it'll save the taxpayers money. And it's because of this collaboration. And so I think there's, a lot of our programs around our Operation Shelter, our houselessness programs are the same way,
Right.
where it's a collaborative effort, and that collaboration is bearing fruit.
Right. I mean, this is a big county. Missoula County is a big geographic county. I mean, the population on the outskirts may not, match what's inside city limits. But, when you start entering Missoula County from the north, you're not anywhere close to downtown.
Yeah.
So it's important, I think, to keep that all in mind.
It's a large area. Quick question with respect to folks that you've been speaking to. Has our governor reached out to you to say hello and introduce himself?
I met the governor sort of by chance. He was in town giving an award to some of our city firefighters. So got the opportunity to go over to Fire Station 1 and meet him when they received that award.
Good. And will there be further conversations with Governor Gianforte, who actually comes up here a lot?
Yeah.
I mean, he comes up to our station a lot.
Yeah, no, and I extended the offer to get together anytime he's in town, and
That's great.
I hope that's something that we can do.
Absolutely.
Right. As opposed to the member of the Public Service Commission who wanted a brownout to be directed in our Missoula's direction. I know that had nothing to do with the politics of anything, but that was a ridiculous thing to
By the way,
talk about.
Right, what type of food do you like to cook? Because Arnie and I we always talk about food on
Let's
this
talk
show.
about the important stuff now that we've got
Right.
Yeah.
Like, what's your specialty?
Well, now that we're kind of going into this fall and winter, although it feels like summer still, I love to make soups and stews and kind of warm weather, kind of cool weather fare. I've got a smoker. I love to put meat on the smoker.
Oh wow!
I love to do the kind of cooking that just takes all day. That yields a really good result, but kind of that project cooking where you spend the whole day in the kitchen and end up with something really rewarding.
I love using my pellet grill.
Your pellet grill, right?
It covers all my mistakes from any other kind of cooking that I've done before that. So you mentioned that we're having an elongated
Indian summer.
Summer here.
Yeah.
I mean, it's still in the 70s, or high 60s, low 70s. But eventually it's going to be winter here again.
Yeah.
And then the biggest problem in the winter is street cleaning.
Yes.
So is there anything new to report to our listeners who always get exacerbated because their street doesn't get cleaned first? What's our plan?
So we it's been a couple years now, but we bought some new pickup mounted plows, and we retooled our snow plow route. So our snow plows go down the more. They obviously do the arterials first, and then they move over to school bus routes and other high priority routes. But then simultaneously, we're sending out these smaller pickups that are handling residential streets that can take care of driveways that are plowed in or things like that. And so it's sort of and we've also changed the staffing hours a little bit so that we've got more efficient use of staff time. And so I think we haven't had a huge snow season since those changes were made, but I do think they made a big difference.
Great.
It definitely makes a big difference. Our guest is Mayor Jordan Hess. This is his first time on What Do You Know? Back after this with our final words with Mayor Hess.
Okay.
Arnie, we are back with Mayor Jordan Hess. Mayor,
so if constituents want to reach you, how do they get a hold of you?
So we have clunky long email addresses at the city, but I'm at mayor@ci.missoula.mt.us. And That's probably the best way to reach me. Another opportunity is to come down to Wednesdays with the Mayor. That's an event that we're putting on monthly. It's down at the Missoula Public Library.
Which is a great facility. Fantastic.
Beautiful
People haven't
facility.
seen it.
Yeah, it's a wonderful facility.
On the 4th floor.
Yep, and we're up on the 4th floor, so we've got a great view. The next one, it's generally the 4th Wednesday of the month, but the next one is October 26th. It's from 6 to 7:30, and that's an opportunity. It's really just kind of an informal discussion. It's moderated by Dennis Bragg, and we're grateful for his help and support. But it's an opportunity to come down and have an informal dialogue about issues of concern.
Great. And is that broadcasted as well?
We're not broadcasting. Dennis is at our sister station, Kiss FM. We're
Right.
not broadcasting it over the radio, but the MCT, the local television, community television, Doug and his group tape it and stream it live. So we're going to figure out how to stream it through the Kiss FM website as well. But yeah,
Right.
then people could submit questions through social media that way, or they could come down to the library and ask questions. They will pass the mic around. It's actually a very good spirited conversation, and we want more people there. We want people to take advantage of this opportunity to speak to local government.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, at the city of Missoula, we aim to be accessible, and so
Right.
this is one forum where we can be accessible. But that's we want to be accessible to the residents that we serve, and so I invite people to come on down.
Last question. After a month on the job, how would you describe your experience?
I have found it to be fascinating. I am learning so much every day, and at the end of the day, I think, man, I can't believe it's already the end of the day, and I have so much more I need or want to do. I just have found it to be incredibly interesting and rewarding.
Do you ever look in, you're sitting in the office, and I know you had a very good, close relationship with Mayor Engen, and those are big shoes to fill. But do you ever, just sit in that office and think, I can't believe I'm here and I'm doing this, and I never would have imagined it?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, I
It's
never would have
amazing.
imagined it, and I think the best I can do is do right by our community to the best of my ability.
Oh, good. Well, I'm glad. I hope this is the first of many sit-downs with us. We enjoy talking to you. I know I can say that for you, Arnie, because I see the big smile on his face.
Yes.
And
I like talking to our mayor, and I like talking with our new mayor, Mayor Jordan Hess.
I appreciate it. Thank you both. It's great to be here.
yeah, it's great to have you. All right, Arnie, I will see you next week.
See you next week, Scott. Take care.
Thank you for listening to What Do You Know?
I can't wait for the next show, Scott.
I'm excited too, Arnie. If you'd like to suggest a guest, send me an email at scottrichmond@townsquaremedia.com. We'll see you next week. And thanks for listening to Newstalk KGVO.
Hey guys, time to get in on the action for the biggest moments in basketball with Prize Picks, America's #1 fantasy sports app. Just select 2 or more players, pick more or less on their projections, place your entry, and win up to 100 times your money. Right now, Prize Picks will match your first deposit of up to $100. Just download the Prize Picks app and use the code GET100. That's code GET100 on Prize Picks for a first deposit match of up to $100. Prize Picks. Pick more. Pick less. It's that easy.